You have now built an asset literally out of thin air where you found a property, a house worth $100,000 or $120,000, and you build it into a $5 million asset, and you pretty much pulled it out of thin air because right now it only exists on paper, but that's good enough for the bank to give you 70% of that money so that you can go out and build a project. It's a beautiful thing. Most people think that you need a huge pile of cash before you can get into ground up real estate development, and it's not true. In fact, it's totally incorrect. If you are a investor or a fix and flipper already in the industry, you are uniquely positioned to access huge profits in ground up construction. And you can access them with cheaper money, better money, and you will make significantly higher profits. I'm talking if the average fix and flip deal generates $60,000, the typical new construction project on one single home, if structured correctly, will generate $100,000 to $250,000 on one deal that can take 8 months to 12 months. You do 4 of those a year at $250,000, that's $1 million on 4 projects. In case you don't know who I am, my name's David. I have been in this space for over 2 decades. Last year alone, I did $14 million, over $14 million in fix and flips with my brother. It was a grind. It was a ton of work. It was over 120 deals. Prior to that, I did over $30 million in ground up development, single family homes, townhomes, apartment complexes. I created entire subdivisions, and the profitability inside the new construction is just so much higher, and you control the process better. So in this video, I want to walk you through step by step how you can get into this world with very little of your own money, because you're not working with hard money lenders or private lenders. You are leveraging institutional financing. I did tens of millions of dollars in institutional construction loans through local banks, primarily small to mid-sized banks. Step 1 in this process is going to be controlling the land. I'll use a story of a small project that I did maybe 2-3 years ago. It was a single family home. The guy wanted $120,000 for it. I looked at it to flip it, or he tried selling it to me so that I could flip it. And when I looked at the deal, there just was no money to be made. However, the house sat on an acre and a half, acre and a quarter, something like that. And so I saw the potential not to put lipstick on a pig and put the house back on the market, but to tear the house down. Before I did that, though, I tied up the property in a contract that was contingent upon permits and entitlements, and specifically with this project was sewer was an issue, making sure that there was enough sewer capacity to the project. So step 1 is going to be tie up the land. Step 2 is going to be concept drawings. Step 2 is going to be concept drawings. So at this point, you're going to have to spend a little bit of money. You tied up the land, you spent, call it $5,000 on entitlements. Now you need to do some concept drawings. Now you need to do some concept drawings to prove the viability for your entitlement process. Entitlements is a legal term that basically means, can I do what I want to do here? Permits are, what am I building? So entitlements are, can I do this? Permits are, here's what I'm doing. Permit is the final approval from the city or the local municipality. So tie up the land. You spent $5,000. Then you're going to go to an architect and an engineer, and you're going to get conceptual drawings. Conceptual drawings are not full-blown construction documents. Construction documents cost tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in some case. You just want conceptual drawings. Your architect is going to give you elevation drawings, which means the front of the home, the back of the home, the side of the home, and he's going to give you a floor plan, which a floor plan just shows the layout. First floor, second floor, basement, etc. The engineer is going to place the structure on the property. Maybe you're building 4 townhouses. Maybe you're building 4 townhouse structures of 6 units. But the engineer is going to place the units on the property, see how it fits, see what your density is, what your unit mix is. But again, these are conceptual. He's just moving rectangles around on a piece of paper. Once you know what your density is, you have a vision for what you want to do with the land. The next step is going to be to schedule pre-application meetings. So now that you know what your density is, you have your drawings from your architect and your engineer, you're going to meet with the city. And this is a somewhat informal meeting just to show them what you're planning to do. At this point, you should have done some research or had your engineer do some research to make sure that your zoning is correct. You're not going to try building an industrial warehouse in a subdivision with single family homes. Like that has to be flushed out either by you or by your engineer. But you know your zoning's correct. You just want to make sure that the city's going to continue to let you move forward. So you're going to do a preliminary meeting. In this meeting, they're going to give you comments and feedback on things that they would like to see changed inside of your conceptual drawing. Continuing on with the example that I started with. So I tied up this land, 120,000 the guy wants. I had to meet with the local municipality and make sure that their utility company, because it was a small rural area, I needed to make sure the utility company could handle the additional 20 units that we wanted to load onto their sewer system, because I wanted to tear the house down, or I did tear the house down and build 20 townhouses. So that was a preliminary meeting that I had to have, was to make sure that the sewer capacity was there. After you have your feedback from the city, now your engineer and your architect go back to the drawing board, and this is where you have to spend some money, because now you need construction documents, and you want to be sending accurate construction documents, accurate submittals to the city, because the better the work is, the quicker they approve it and the quicker you move on. But now you have your permits, you have a fully entitled piece of property that was maybe worth 100 grand when you started. Now you have permits to build 20 townhomes. Now you have permits to build 20 townhomes on it. So now this thing has real value, because you put in sweat equity and $10,000-$20,000 worth of architectural and engineered drawings. Now you go to your lending institution. The first thing you have to do is adjust your mindset. If you're an investor used to working with private money lenders and hard money lenders, we have a bad habit of getting stuck in a certain mindset when it comes to larger lending institutions. I know a lot of guys who don't want to use banks because they're scared of construction loans. But let's keep in mind here, we're not flipping one house. We're trying to build 20 townhomes. So you're not going to go to Citibank. You're not going to go to Wells Fargo. You want to avoid those type of banks. You want a relationship bank, which is typically going to be a local credit union or a local bank in your area that has 4 or 5 branches. Maybe they're regional and they're, in through your state, but they're not a massive national chain. And the reason you're doing that is because relationships matter in this business. Bankers care about the relationship. If it's not Citibank or Wells Fargo, they want to make sure that you're successful, and that's going to give you a better shot at getting an approval, because up to this point, although you're in the industry, if you are a real estate investor, it still is a pretty good sized jump to go from flipping 10 houses a year to, say, building a 20-unit townhouse complex. So you're going to need to make a good case to the lender. So adjust your mindset, realize that these banks want to lend you money, realize that draw schedules are not prohibitive, understand that even though their time frames are longer, you're dealing with a project that by nature of what it is intrinsically going to take longer to do a project like this than it is to flip one single family home. You're going to want to contact quite a few of them. You're not going to just call one bank, and if they say, no, we won't do that, then you just forget about it and move on. You will have to systematically contact these bankers. I have a script that I use when I'm calling banks. Let's say I'm looking in a new area in South Florida. I will call all the banks and use the same script over and over to find out very quickly whether they will do my type of projects or they want nothing to do with construction and acquisition loans, which is what we're talking about here. The next step is going to be leverage. So now you're going to get an appraiser to appraise your permitted lot. What is the lot's value now that it has permits? For the sake of this example, we're going to say we bought this thing for 100. The example I used at the beginning of the video was 120,000. But with that particular deal, it went from being worth 120,000 to being worth 500,000 after we got it permitted. So your appraiser, it's going to need to be a commercial appraiser. He's going to appraise your permitted and entitled lot. Probably worth about $400,000 or $500,000 now because it can fit 20 units. He's also going to appraise your townhouse floor plans on the lot and appraise a future value of the completed project. So you haven't built anything, but you've built value by getting the entitlements. Your appraiser is going to put a value on the lot as it sits with permits and the lot once it has the 20 units built on it. Let's say he comes up with a $5 million valuation for the completed project. You're then going to go to your bank and you are going to leverage the sweat equity that you put into that land by taking it from being a $100,000 acquisition. Keep in mind, you haven't closed on the property yet. It's simply tied up with a contingent contract. You're going to leverage that sweat equity that you put in the land to the bank and say, hey, It was 100. I put $400,000 worth of equity into it. I want to leverage my equity towards this construction loan. If you pick the right bank, they're going to give you an 80% LTV loan, which means loan to value. Let's go very conservative and say the bank is only going to give you 70% LTV loan. So 70% of the $5 million that the appraiser said it's worth. That's $3.5 million. So the bank should give you $3.5 million to build your projects. However, you're building 20 townhouses. You don't need to borrow $3.5 million all at once. You're not going to reach in the cash bag, grab 3.5 and borrow all that money at the same time. You're probably going to build 5 or 6 units at a time. Probably 5 units at a time. So 4 5-unit buildings. So you don't ever even need to borrow the entire amount of money that they're willing to give you. So now you have your permits, now you've got your financing underway, you have your entitled property, now you close on the acquisition. The bank funds the acquisition, and then they give you construction money based off of a draw schedule that you submitted to them. Now, if this is your first time project, I would highly recommend working with a builder or general contractor, because the other part of getting approvals for this type of loan as a new developer, moving from, say fix and flip into land development, is they want track record. So if you can go to them and say, here's all my equity in the property because of my entitlement process I went through. Here is my engineer, who's a good engineer. Here's my architect. Here's my general contractor or builder, and here's his track record. Here's the real estate agent who's going to sell the properties when I'm done, or here's the broker. Maybe you are the broker, but you're presenting the team to the bank and you're leveraging everybody's track record, because you're not saying like, I'm going to build this all by myself, even though I've never built a ground up project before. You're leveraging the however many years of experience inside of the team that you've built. Your process from start to finish is controlling the land, getting your approvals, establishing a value, showing the bank that value, getting your funding, and then the construction begins. And if you have the right construction management team in place, that's a whole different phase that is going to go a completely different way. But you have now built an asset literally out of thin air, where you found a property, a house worth $100,000 or $120,000, and you build it into a $5 million asset, and you pretty much pulled it out of thin air, because right now it only exists on paper, but that's good enough for the bank to give you 70% of that money so that you can go out and build a project. It's a beautiful thing. It truly is exponential leverage once you start doing projects like this. And once your mind starts thinking in this way and you start looking at a fix and flip property as a potential development opportunity, your world, the doors on your world are going to get blown wide open. If any of this is interesting and it sounds like maybe I could help you on a project you're looking at, that's no problem. There's a link in the description. I think it's also in the comments. You can click on that link, book a call with me. We can have a conversation, see if maybe we can work together. If not, no big deal. In the meantime, if you found any value in this, please subscribe, and I will see you on the next one.